What's up, meme team? Welcome to Whaddo You Meme. I'm sitting here with Apostate Prophet. Apostate Prophet, what it do?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, brother. Hey, so let's just get right into it. First off, for the people that are subbed to my channel that don't know who are you and what do you do?
So I am the Apostate Prophet, as you said already. My real name is Ridwan Aydemir, which I mention quite rarely. I'm a former Muslim. I built my whole channel on that, on being a former Muslim and criticizing Islam from the perspective of a former Muslim. The thing with me is I was very religious. I grew up in a Muslim family. I was born into a Muslim family. And at some point I became very religious. I practiced Islam very, very strictly. I studied it very diligently. I read basically everything that you're supposed to probably study as a Muslim and that most people don't study. I went out participating in many Muslim missionary activities. But at some point in my life, about 4 to 5 years ago, I stopped believing in Islam. I stopped believing in this religion. And about a year after that, I also stopped believing in the idea of God altogether. And at first, I was kind of in a process of a bit of a depression, like a loss of the meaning of life. But after a while, I started gathering a little bit more meaning again, and things started making a little bit more sense. I gave meaning to my own life in a different way, independent from the indoctrination of Islam. What I realized then at that point is that Islamic missionaries spread Islam in the West in ways that are dishonest. You know, they misrepresent Islam in order to gain more sympathy for Islam, and they try to spread Islam that way. All that just pushed me as a person who studied Islam so much to go out there and to share my side of the story, to share my experience, my findings, my knowledge on Islam. I thought I need to go out there and do something, say something. I felt very passionate about that, and that's basically all I'm doing right now.
No, that's super interesting. So, when you said that you were like super kind of religious, so you weren't just like your average kind of like Muslim who's just kind of like what's the term, like carnal Muslim or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it.
moderate Muslim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you were one that was a lot more passionate about it. So, what sect were you in, by the way, or were you like a Sunni or a Shia or?
I was a Sunni Muslim, so I belonged to the mainstream type of Islam. But I was also part of Sufi Islam. So my theology was based on Sunni Islam, which is the vast majority of Muslims, but my practices were also going very much into the direction of Islamic mysticism, which is a minority among Muslims, among Islam, but also quite popular in the Islamic world, and theologically in agreement with Sunni Islam.
Interesting. So, now, explain to me a little bit. I'm just kind of curious. What was this kind of deconversion process like for you, kind of like emotionally? Were you talking about like, I mean, first actually, was it kind of a progression? Was it first like leaving Islam and then you started losing kind of meaning and stuff in life, or was it just like Islam to atheism and then you started feeling like you were losing meaning? Or
No, it was, at first it started with, I didn't even start at some point. It was just a very, very long process. Even when I was a very religious Muslim, when I was at the peak of my religiousness, I always had these questions in my mind about so many things that I read in the Quran, that people, that I was told, that I was taught, problematic issues in the Hadith about Muhammad's life, and all these things. But when I was religious, I used to tell myself not to question, not to just to shut all these thoughts down, because if there is one thing that Islam repeatedly teaches you from very early childhood, is that it is the absolute truth, and that you are never to question any bit of it. Like you cannot dare to question anything about it.
and on that point too, that's interesting because in a lot of their sources and stuff like that, if you start doubting, you could be in danger of hell. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there are many references to it. In one hadith, for example, Muhammad says that that Satan directly gives you doubts, and that if you listen to any of those doubts, that if you indulge in any way with any of those things, then you should immediately stop thinking and immediately seek refuge in Allah, because you cannot in any way use your mind, you know.
Yeah.
And in other references, it explicitly says that Allah hates those who ask too many questions. That is a very that is actually in the sources of Islam. That is among the hadith where Muhammad says that you are not supposed to ask too many questions because Allah hates those who ask too many questions, which is very incredible.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I had many questions in my mind, and over the years I couldn't find answers to questions, especially since Islam claims that the Quran is the direct word of Allah, the supposed Almighty Creator. The Quran is supposed to be exactly His word as He spoke it.
In other words, too, if there's one thing that's off in the Quran, that means that all of Islam crumbles then,
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely. That's why I like to say that if there is one mistake in the Quran, then the entire religion is destroyed. It's gone. There's no chance.
Interesting, yeah.
It was a long process, but eventually I brought myself to a point where I was completely sure that I don't believe in this anymore. And I actually made it a moment where I still remember the moment where I just, where I was standing at the door about to go inside, and I told myself, I am not a Muslim. I don't believe in Allah. I don't believe in Islam. And that was basically the moment. Yeah.
Well, that's super interesting. So how you kind of said that thought, I remember too, it's kind of a side note, but I remember at one point, I remember hitting that point where I was like studying a lot of philosophy of religion and stuff. And then I kept saying to myself, I remember specifically that moment where I was like, I believe in God now. I believe in God now. And that was really weird to me. So I kind of remember that same kind of transition.
Yeah.
But it seems like we were going kind of different ways. So, so I guess my question now is what I'd kind of like to get into a little bit. What was your kind of journey like to atheism? And tell me if I'm right or wrong here. It would seem like a lot of people, if they feel like they've been misled and lied to by these authorities, then they kind of just want to kind of reject all these authorities that are saying this, because you feel like I can't trust these people when they were talking about God and stuff, so therefore nothing must be true. Was it kind of like that process for you or different?
Yeah, I mean, I see in very many people who leave religion behind, no matter what religion it is, if it's Islam or Christianity. As you said, people have this reaction like, "Oh, I have been tricked. Everything was a lie. I can't believe any of those anymore. All of them are a lie. I have to fight against all of them now. All religions are equally bad. Whatever."
Yeah.
You know, it goes into weird directions. But the thing is, I was initially part of this whole new atheism, this whole reaction to, you know, first I doubted. First I stopped believing in Islam, and for about almost a year I wasn't sure about the idea of God. I kept questioning it. I kept studying other religions, and only almost a year after I stopped believing in Islam, I came to the conclusion that I don't believe in God either. But it wasn't a result of the whole, you know, I have been tricked. In my case, it wasn't. But I did. It did cause a reaction with me too, where I initially went out and started going against all religion and going against the entire idea of religion and insulting religion and all that stuff. After a while, I calmed down and started differentiating between religions and what is and is not a problem.
No, that's super interesting, because I think, like you said, a lot of people kind of, what you realize kind of in a lot of atheists that used to be Christians, a lot of times they'll say they found like something that they thought was an error in the Bible, and therefore now they just, are convinced that God doesn't exist. So it seems like that happens a lot. Basically, I'm just kind of wondering what prompted your atheism.
I would say it was a completely different series of questions and of thoughts that led me to atheism after Islam. I think leaving Islam definitely played a role. It was definitely a factor, because once you stop believing in this one religion, in my case, it opens the door to so many things, like can I trust anything at all? Should I just question everything? Am I not just merely human? Should I not be open to any thought, to every thought? And that just leads to so many things. And it doesn't even stop with the belief in God. It goes to moral questions, to everything you can possibly think of. With atheism, it was, of course, I thought about the existence of God for a very long time after Islam. And I had these major questions in my mind. The major questions were, some of the questions were, for example, can I be blamed if I don't believe in God? There was actually one main thing that drove me toward atheism more and more, because I thought I am merely human. If I question so much, and if I really seek for the truth in life, and I end up not finding it, as many other people end up as well, then how far can I truly be blamed? I even thought at that point, when I came to that conclusion, I didn't even know if I believe in God or not, because I thought it's not relevant if I believe in God or not. I thought even if there is a God, then he probably knows that I did my best to find him, and to truly believe in him, and to truly convince myself. And if I ended up not believing and not following the right thing, then I guess God won't blame me. There were many other issues, very, very deep ones. It is kind of similar. I think the final thing that made me think, okay, I don't believe in God. I have this thing that I call the why paradox, which I don't talk very much about, because I usually don't talk very much about atheism unless I'm asked about it. But it is something that I thought about, which where I imagine the letter Y, and there is no meaning to the letter Y at all. It's just because it is a path that divides into two directions. One of them is heaven, and the other is hell, and I stay in the middle of it. I can now live my life truthfully, in truth, and believe in the right thing, and end up going to heaven, or I can make the wrong decision and end up in hell. Now you have to think about. According to the belief in God, to the Abrahamic monotheistic belief in God, especially according to Christianity and Judaism, to Christianity and Islam, God is believed to be good, almighty, and all-knowing. If I'm now here at this spot, at this direction between the right decision and the wrong decision, and eternal life or eternal punishment, before I made any of those decisions, before I made the wrong decision, and went to hell, did God know that I would make that decision?
Right.
That was one of the main questions. I thought about the question of free will. People who believe often say, but you have free will. You can, in the end, decide whether you want to believe in God or not to believe in God.
Yeah.
But I say it doesn't even matter if you decide or not, because it doesn't matter what I do with my free will. In the very beginning, before God created me, before he created my free will,
He knew.
God knew exactly what I would do in the end with my free will.
Yeah, I see. No, that's interesting. So I had two thoughts when you were saying that. First is that you obviously don't spend enough time watching my channel, or you wouldn't be an atheist anymore. No, second, the way I think of it, those questions are always super interesting, right? About like God's knowledge and then how it relates to free will and determinism. The way I like to think about it is God knowing something doesn't necessarily cause it, right? It's just kind of like a common analogy to talk about, like a weather barometer. The barometer reads the weather, so it knows it's going to rain, but it doesn't cause it to rain, right? And so it's kind of like that with our free will, where yes, God knows what we would freely choose and decides to create you in order for you to choose, but so you could either choose to spend eternity with God, or you can choose to spend eternity apart from God.
So it's a good analogy, but I think about a different analogy in response to that analogy whenever I think about this question, which is I think about a cat, for example. A cat that you would create if you are in the position of God. If you are in the position to create a cat, a specific cat, that is only limited to act the way you created to act, and that cat can make the right decision or the bad decision, and eventually end up in heaven or in hell. But before you create the cat, you know that cat is going to make the wrong decision and be punished eternally, forever. Would you go ahead and create the cat? You would probably not create the cat.
I would create 50 cats.
You would not create that cat, but whether you would create the cat or not, the point is also that that it doesn't matter whether you know or don't know. The whole point of that is also that whatever the cat does depends on how you created the cat. When you create this cat and its entire existence and all its actions and the results of its actions completely depend on how you made it to be, then the cat doesn't have much choice outside of that. It can't take any responsibility. It can't be responsible for its good actions or its bad actions. It will only do whatever you want that cat to be, whatever you made that cat to be, whatever you made possible for that cat, which means the wrong decision in the end that sends that cat to hell forever is a decision that completely stems from you, not from the cat.
So if the cat's created with free will, though, so you're saying if so, for example, if God knows the decisions the cat's gonna make, right, or I'm gonna make, or whatever, right? But I still decide to create the cat and give it the opportunity or the option to be able to choose life or death, just put it simply, right? I guess I still don't understand what's fundamentally immoral about that. Because I'd say, especially you believe in Islam too, we value choice, right? The ability to choose, right? The ability to choose to go against Islam, choose to believe whatever we want to believe or do what we want to do, right? So we value that choice. So what is it, I guess, that's different? I guess I fail to see the moral aspect in that.
Well, the moral aspect is that the moral aspect is that when you before you even make any of those choices, I mean, God knows already what choice you are going to make. And the thing is not that God knows what choice you're going to make. The thing is that God creates you while he knows that you are going to make the bad choice and going to hell.
Okay, so think of it this way. This isn't a perfect analogy, so don't think that means this is the exact same thing. But what I'm thinking is, when me and my wife decided to have my son, I knew he was going to be a terror, not as much of a terror as he is now, my little one. Right? We decided to create. I know that he's going to do things that are wrong, but I think that he would still be happy that he was created in the first place, right? You know what I mean? And then so whether we think of hell in terms of annihilationism or people being able to choose whatever kind of eternity that they want or whatever, but the fact that they exist, I mean, like, would you rather have been created at all, like personally?
I think the more accurate analogy would be if you decided to make a child and then put that child into a cage for the rest of its life and even beyond without the possibility of getting out of it by dying.
Yeah.
Would that child still in the end be thankful for you to making him? I
So-
don't think he would.
It's funny because I could see this analogy keep growing. But what if we created? So I mean, what if I taught to my son, right? And then when he's 18, I'm like, all right, you're gonna move out at 18. You're gonna make your own decisions or whatever you want to do for the rest of your life. I think it would still be a great good for him to exist and have the freedom to choose, because only then can he experience this radical love and radical everything. You know what I mean? All these different kinds of emotions and things that make life so rich.
Well, I would say instead of responding directly to that, I want to go even further with that. I want to say the first thing is that your child's reaction after giving him that life and that chance would be to still probably be mad at you because you are eventually judging him for something that he is inherently, naturally, completely flawed about. He is not made to be to go straight on that right path in order to reach fulfillment,
Right.
in order to want fulfillment and to reach it just because he wants it. Many people want to reach the right thing but don't reach it. If you think about Muslims, for example, which is a very good topic at hand, many Muslims genuinely believe in God and genuinely believe that their belief in God will bring them to their Creator, and they will have fulfilled their purpose
Right.
forever. But they will not, according to the Christian perspective. Similarly, according to the Islamic perspective, all these Christians, you for example, although you are so faithful and you so much want to be with God, will go to hell because you're an idolater according to their belief.
Right.
The other thing is, I think the analogy is lacking, because when you tell your child that he has the chance to make the right choices and eventually to either have this or that, then you are showing yourself to the child. You are showing him that everything, that all the rules that you give to him are realistic, are true, are right there in front of him. When God gives the same choice to humans, then he doesn't give humans anything besides that, besides just saying, believe in me, believe that what I'm saying is the truth. And the thing is, most are people are inherently naturally flawed. God made people naturally flawed, and people just won't be convinced that this is the right thing, that they need to stick by these rules in order to go to heaven and be in heaven forever. Because like me, take me, I want to believe, but I don't believe, because I don't end up being convinced. I don't end up believing in God and being saved forever. Is that really my fault in the end? And is that really comparable with you telling your child that he has the choice?
No, I appreciate your perspective too. So, one of the things too is like every religion besides Christianity, there's a conception that you have to be doing all these good things in order to be good enough to merit salvation, right? But in Christianity, it's opposite, because then it's like God actually came down from heaven and said, "Here I am." To pay for your sins, right? And so then it's like saying, I know that you're flawed by your own choice, by the way, because God didn't create us initially flawed. We choose to, in Christianity, we choose to do bad things. And so we're choosing to do these wrong things, but then he's saying, I love you enough where if you want to be with me, a way to reconcile you with myself, so that way you can be with me forever if that's what you want. And I think that's perfectly fair.
I would say it doesn't even matter whether the religion requires things to do or not, or whether it's only about believing in salvation or not. I really don't think it matters. I think of course, from my perspective, when I look at religion, I very much prefer the Christian perspective to the Islamic perspective. For example, where Christianity says believe and you will be saved, and Islam says go to the toilet the right way or you will be punished.
Right.
But the thing is, even if it's only about believing, you are still inherently flawed, and you have no impact on that. You were imagine someone who was born in 1990 in let's say Saudi Arabia. This person just came to this age, and all this person learned from the very beginning of his life was that Islam is the right religion, Allah is the truth, and if he goes outside of that in any way, he will be punished. He's in danger. He will lose his eternity. If you now confront that person and want to invite him to Christianity, for example, and want to tell him that it is very easy, that he just needs to believe in the Christian God and he will be saved, it is not that person's fault not to believe in Christianity.
Well, yeah, and there's a couple things there, and then we'll address this, then I'll give you a final word on this topic, and then we'll go to our closing topic.
Okay.
So what I would say in this aspect too is that, so first off, when we say we're born flawed and all this, and these leanings towards these different beliefs or different actions and that sort of thing too. So for example, I have like drug addiction in some of my family and stuff like that. So I probably have a natural inclination towards drugs, but I've never done any drugs in my life, right? And I've never even smoked weed in my life, right? So, and part of it was knowing that too, is knowing that I could see myself being an addict, you know what I mean? I could see myself relaxing in these drugs and that sort of thing too. So I never decided to start. So I'd say that I still have the free choice, even though I have these natural inclinations towards doing these other things. So it's the natural inclinations to me is a little different too, because then when it comes to like the whole kind of religion thing too, we hear a lot about these stories of Jesus and stuff appearing to Muslims and stuff like that too. We don't really hear about like Muhammad appearing to Christians in America, right? Changing their mind and stuff too. I do believe that Jesus will judge people based off of what they know, what they don't know, right? And we have biblical support for this too, in Romans, and also with like Job and all this stuff too. But also on top of it too, in Christianity is really sacrificial, and people don't like, none of us like that at core. None of us do, you know what I mean? I don't like it at times, you know what I mean? And so, I'd say the same thing about myself, realistically, honestly though. So that's why I genuinely don't see it as a way as like, you're bad, I'm good. I genuinely don't. Because I think we're all terrible, and you're maybe a little more terrible. But anyways, so with that, I'd say that like, even if I don't know the answer to this, I still don't think there's a reason to think that God doesn't exist.
I would say I am most definitely convinced that God does not exist. From my perspective, just because of that question. I think this is the only question, the only argument, the only topic that actually makes me think that God doesn't exist. It is
You're
not.
saying that the hell thing, right?
Yeah, the whole dilemma, the whole paradox.
Okay.
It is not that there is no evidence for God. It is not that there are planets and that there are different cultures and all of this, all of that stuff that people mention in order to prove or disprove God. None of that really matters to me. And when I watch people argue about the existence of God based on whatever things, based on if people can exist on their own or not, I think it's just all maybe good for them, but to me it's a very irrelevant discussion. I think it's just an entirely logical, not even moral, slightly moral, but more logical argument to me. There is basically no response to that question. And that question just kills it for me because logically that question concludes to me that God cannot exist because his qualities are inconsistent.
So my last question that I really wanted to move into is, so you don't believe in any God and any religion or anything like that. So why is it that you spend time only going against Islam rather than going against other religions?
Good question. Well, the thing is, this is a very, very huge different topic that we could talk for hours about or for an hour about. But the thing is, I think it's just a conclusion of my thoughts on what religion is, what religion does in the world. I have nothing against the concept of religion itself. I have nothing against the concept of God itself or the belief in God itself. I don't ever go out and criticize Islam for Muslims believing in God. I don't make fun of Muslims believing in God or believing in angels or whatever it is. Although the idea to me seems illogical and false and wrong, but I don't think that's a problem at all. I think people can believe in God, and it's probably a completely natural, completely normal desire, a completely normal thing to think that there is something more to this, and to think God is real and God created me and God wants to be there with me. I often find myself in situations where I believe, or where I think, I wish God was real and I wish he would help me right now. I wish I could ask him for help right now because sometimes you really need it, and I feel sympathy for that need. I feel sympathy for people expressing such need. When I think about the concept of religion, I think about whether it is mostly good or mostly harmful. When I think about Christianity, and I think about just Christianity as a religion, not about what Christianity is in today's time or what it was in the past. When I just think about it as a religion, as a theological system, I think that it does more good than it does bad in the world. You know, I think it has some bad aspects. It has some moral issues that I certainly disagree with, but I think it does more good than bad. When I think about other religions like Hinduism, for example, I think of it as doing more good than bad. It has some things like apathy that I think is detrimental, but that is just a minor thing. Mostly it just gives people peace and some reason in life. And I could say the same about all kinds of religion. I could say the same about Judaism, which to me seems to be more like a form of unity and meaning as an identity and as a group. When I think about Islam, I think it brings so much terrible stuff into this world that I just cannot disregard the bad sides and just think about how much good it also does. Islam certainly brings some good things into this world. Like, I can't even think of an example, see. No, Islam certainly brings some good things, but all the terrible aspects of it, how it treats women, how it treats people with basic opinions, how it orders and teaches the killing of people who simply don't believe in it anymore, how it orders to suppress all other minorities, how it teaches so much hate and violence for all other groups, how the religious book itself calls other religious groups the words of creation, and it is the only religion that does that. When I think about how Islam is the only religion that actually goes out there and insults other religious groups by their names, and teaches to hate them and to persecute them and to subdue them and to fight them, I just can't have any tolerance, any understanding at all for Islam as a religion, as a religious system. And which is why I want to go out and fight about it. I mean, many people say it is only a religion, most Muslims are peaceful, most Muslims don't have any radical thoughts, any bad thoughts, which is, by the way, also not true. Most Muslims do have very radical and very bad ideas. Most Muslims believe that women should be directly killed and stoned for adultery. About half of Muslims believe that people should be killed for not believing in Islam anymore. Most Muslims believe people should be punished for criticizing Islam, physically punished for criticizing Islam. And all those bad qualities also come into the West when Muslims move into the West. So the entire religion is problematic. The problem is Islam. And I really criticize Islam because it is Islam, not because it is a religion. I have no problem with religion.
So before we go, where can people find you? What social networks are you on, and where can people find more of your work?
Well, I'm definitely on here on YouTube as Apostate Prophet. That aside, I am on Facebook. I don't use it very much. I think outside of YouTube, most of my activity is on Twitter, where I use my personal account called Apostate Ridvan. So that's basically where I am.
Appreciate the convo. It's great talking with you, man. And yeah, I'll definitely keep you in prayer so that way if God does exist, hopefully, one day you'll join alongside of us in Christianity, and
let me know.
Yeah, we'll fight from that end together.
Yeah,
I'll let you know.
Let me know.
All right, thanks for your time, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. I enjoyed the conversation very, very much. Thank you.
Well, the last thing I just wanted to say is stay away from Islam.
Stay away from Islam? What do you mean?